Today I want to share with you my experiences with the Restructure projects and the main points you need to consider before getting started. During my time at Navigo, I have worked with a number of Australian organisations, assisting them through all types of restructure activities. This has ranged from entire organisation restructures, departmental restructures, to handling mergers and acquisitions. These projects have given me insight into common themes that appear during each restructure, and it is this information that I want to share with you, so that when you are facing your next restructure project, the process will be less of a headache and hopefully you will consume less alcohol throughout it. But first, let's have a look at the drivers for the restructures. Businesses operate in a dynamic world where there are a number of different factors outside of our control that cause change. For example, the global financial crisis hit with limited warning. For many years now, our manufacturing industry has experienced major challenges. But on the flip side, our resources sector is booming and can't really keep up. As we have seen the economic landscape change considerably over the past decade, we have also seen technology constantly changing in line with business demands. Some organisations embrace technology, using it to increase productivity and efficiency. However, we also see some organisations struggle to keep up. It seems as though there is something new and cutting edge introduced every week. Each Australian industry is a competitive one. It is the Aussie culture to be competitive. Competition is one of the key drivers, which adds to the level of constant change. It is these factors that will have a direct impact on your business. Depending on the nature of your organisation, how long it has been operating, and what industry you work in, which government is in power, the impact caused by these factors on the previous slide could be an increase in growth, one of the more favourable impacts, which is planning for future development and expansion of organisations, a merger or acquisition, organisations joining forces as we see quite regularly organisation takeovers, a restructure of your existing business or team. This sounds straightforward, but it's really not. And downsizing, reducing the size and cost of your existing business. Once one or more of these factors has impacted your business, you will need to plan for the necessary changes. I am now going to take you through what we call the anatomy of a restructure. These are the 7 key points you need to consider before beginning any kind of restructure. The first key point is your objectives. What are you trying to achieve by doing the restructure? It is important for these objectives to be visible during the whole project to see how close or far away you are from achieving them. Some of the common objectives are to merge a business or team together, to clean up the organisational design, which may include balancing or reducing the number of levels within the organisation, or fixing the span of control for managers. To move to a new business model, for example, moving from a product-based model to a functional-based model, or to reduce the headcount and cost. We are going to do a quick poll now to see what the main objectives of restructures are for everyone here today. So, Michelle, can you bring up the poll?
Thanks, Belinda. So I've just launched the poll now. You should all see that there on your screens. Basically, we're asking you 4 questions. What do you see most as your objective for your restructures? So we've got merging businesses or departments together, cleaning up your organisational design, moving to a new business model, or unfortunately reducing your headcount or cost. So I'm just seeing the results coming through now. I'm just going to wait a few more minutes as the audience votes. And a couple more minutes, guys, and I'm going to close the poll. Right, I'm going to close the poll now, and we'll have a look at the results. Just sharing these results here. So, Belinda, I'll hand it over to you. It looks pretty even across the board there, but I'll leave it for your expert commentary.
Oh, it does look quite even. The winner, just by slightly, is the cleanup of organisational design, which is actually probably a little bit different to what I was expecting. Other than that, we have 40% on the merging of businesses and teams together and 43% on reducing the headcount and costs. So I think that's just a sign of times are changing in the business, the whole world being dynamic and everything changing at the moment. So yeah, that's quite interesting results, which is great. Okay, so now that we know what your objectives are, how do you ensure that your objectives are met during your restructure? So one organisation I assisted had the goal of cleaning up their organisational design, with the objective being to achieve a more balanced organisation structure. Their business rules were simple on the face of it. The brief consisted of two key goals. One was that their organisation was to be limited to 9 levels of management. And the second was that each manager had to have at least 4, but no more than 10 direct subordinates reporting to them. We used this chart to help identify if they were reaching their goals. This chart uses conditional formatting to highlight when a manager has had too many or not enough direct reports. It also displays the deepest branch in the hierarchy, so you can easily identify the maximum number of levels for each branch. This chart quickly shows us that there are some areas of the business where the hierarchy was 13 levels deep, and a large number of managers that didn't have enough direct reports. They used this chart throughout their whole restructure project to ensure they had a balanced organisational design as the final result. So the next point is the outputs. What do you need as a result of the restructure? You need to have a model of the changes. Ideally, this would be a visual perspective of the workforce as a way to work with the business on the required changes. I have seen this done in a couple of different ways, having a model of both the current state and future state of the organisation to be able to see a visual comparison between the two. I've also seen a model of both option A and option B, along with the current state model, so a visual comparison can be done of both ideas. With the future state models, we generally see the removal of employee names from the chart to give it a more objective view. Different models may also be used for different audiences. For example, a model to show the business, which displays employee names, and another model to show the union, which is position-based only. Again, conditional formatting can be used to highlight different changes in the chart, such as highlighting a new position. I have another example of this one coming up. Once these models have been approved, ideally you want to have data to be able to import back into your HRIS or payroll system, or a delta of changes to make. You will need some analytics about your restructure. For example, the final headcount, total cost, number of positions being made redundant, number of new hires, etc. Another organisation I worked with needed to produce charts that highlighted positions with proposed changes. They simply highlighted in different colours if a position was going to be made redundant, reappointed somewhere else, or a new role or needed a data change. This chart was used to consult with the business on the proposed changes before they even occurred. Once the changes were finalised, another version of this chart with employee names removed was used in order to consult with the relevant union. We produced 2 separate charts, current state and future state, so they could easily visually compare the proposed changes. This was much easier than analysing an Excel spreadsheet. They also wanted to see an impact summary of the changes from the proposed restructure. So in the profile, which is just on the left-hand side down here, we have added some key information like the number of redundancies, number of new roles, and total number of positions. This way, the impact of their changes could be immediately seen as they were working through the project. Now we have seen what the objectives and outputs are, what tools are we going to use to assist us achieve these? When taking on a large project, like a restructure, the tools you use play a critical part in how much effort is involved. Here is a horror story example of a restructure that we could easily turn around using the appropriate tools. I arrived at the customer's premises where my brief was to assist with a restructure project that had already started. I was taken into a room with no windows, one door, and a rainbow of post-it notes on the walls. They were using post-it notes for each position. The post-it notes were colour-coded by department. It looked like a kindergarten classroom. Using the post-it notes, they could move positions around. As you may have already guessed, using this method as a tool for their restructure was clearly troubled with many risks and issues. This customer was not an existing Navigo customer and didn't have any tool to assist with a project of this kind. They came to us to find the right tool and assist with the process in order to get things on track. In this case, we implemented OrgPlus Enterprise with the Blueprint module so that they were able to create blueprints to reproduce what was on the post-it notes. This allowed them to easily view their different proposed models without having to move post-its around or come in the next morning and find them all on the floor, with no way of knowing where they came from. They were also able to export the data into a spreadsheet at the end. I have no idea how they would be able to export that data from post-it notes. Another organisation that I've worked with was using Excel as their only tool for the restructure. They had their hierarchy together with the proposed hierarchy in a spreadsheet. However, they were unable to visualise it. It wasn't until I imported this massive spreadsheet into OrgPlus Enterprise did I really know what the hierarchy looked like. We've also seen Visio used on many occasions. The thing to remember is, Visio is a diagramming tool and wasn't designed for the restructuring purposes. Now that we have the tools, who is going to drive the overall project? So we need to build the team. One of the difficulties with restructures is that only a select group in the organisation knows about it, and rightly so, due to its very nature. So ensuring that you have the right staff available to assist, this needs to be managed carefully. The people you have working on your restructure can be key in making it successful. Some of the main roles, which can differ across organisations, that you need to be involved in this project are a human resources officer or equivalent to work on the required models for the project, a data analyst, as many as you need, that has advanced Excel skills and will be able to assist with data-related processes throughout the project, like merging data together, validating the data, and importing the data. Finally, contacts within the business, so you can liaise with them when making decisions on the restructure. In my experience, having data analysts involved can make a big difference in the time it takes to complete the project. When they are involved, they can assist with many of the data issues, including the data merging process and data validation, in a timely manner, and the team doesn't have to wait for someone else to get these important stages done. Now we know the team, how should they work together? If you have multiple people working independently on the restructure, this will increase the complexity of the project, since you will need to have multiple processes, including a data merge process, to ensure consistency of the data. Organisations collaborate differently. One example I'm about to talk you through used one blueprint only to produce their model. and the other example has multiple people working on multiple blueprints at the same time. The first example had a couple of employees working together on the Restructure project. They projected blueprint up onto the screen, and one of the employees stood at the screen, moving positions around with his hands, Minority Report style, with input from the other members of the team. While decisions were being made, I was making the position changes on the computer using Blueprint. They loved the speed in which they could see the results of this change and an instant recalculation of formulas, such as headcounts and total costs as they went. In this example, there was only one blueprint created that all the employees were working on together. This reduced the need for any data merging or complex processes on how to create the model. The next example has employees that independently worked on the restructures of different areas of the business, all at the same time. To handle this, separate blueprints were created and assigned to the appropriate employee to work on. Once their changes had been made, we exported all of the data from the separate blueprints individually, then merged this data together. This also raised the need for a consistent process to ensure that all the blueprints were handled in the same way. A process for the employees was created to explain how to handle new positions, new employees, transfers within the same area, transfers to different areas, employees who have left, positions being made redundant, data changes, etc. You can see that this easily increases the complexity of the project. Neither example is right or wrong. It is determining what suits your situation the best. This may also be impacted on the time frame you have to complete the project. How long do your employees have to complete their restructure? Does the restructure need to be completed all at the same time, or can it be a phased approach, completing one department or team at a time? The time frame that you have will impact on the number of people you have working on the project and the processes you adopt. Completing one department at a time may result in a more time-consuming process with complicated data merges. Also, the longer you have to complete the restructure, the more changes that will naturally occur throughout the business. For example, new hires, employees leaving, etc. One project I've worked on had a time frame of 1 month to complete an organisation-wide restructure for a couple of thousand employees. They completed the restructure of departments separately, so a data merge process was required. However, since the whole project was within a month, they didn't have to deal with too many changes to the organisation that occurred during that time. Whereas another organisation took over 1 year to complete their project. In this time, they had to recreate their models many times with the latest data set. Now, I have mentioned a couple of times now the concept of data, and this is probably the trickiest part of these projects. Potential data issues need to be thought about before you start. Most organisations I have worked with haven't had their current state right before they started these projects. This is generally due to not having an organisation chart at all, or one that is updated on a regular basis. If you have bad data to begin with, you will have bad data throughout the whole process. It's the rubbish in, rubbish out concept. The most common issue with the current state is that the hierarchy is wrong to begin with. For example, positions are not reporting to the correct positions, or there are orphans, meaning positions without a manager, which is due to data issues with the hierarchy. I find viewing the hierarchy visually to be the easiest way to verify that the hierarchy is correct. Obviously, it is important for this to be accurate, for you to be able to identify the impact of the changes in restructure correctly. In some of these projects I've worked on, updating the current state has been the most time-consuming part of the project. Once the restructure process has been completed and approved, one of the many tasks that has to occur is to reflect the changes into your core systems. Unfortunately, there is no quick fix solution to this stage. However, there are a number of things that you will need to consider to make it easier. If you have multiple people collaborating on the restructure, a data migration process will need to occur. Previously, we have achieved this by appending multiple blueprint data extracts together. I would also recommend that you have a data validation process to ensure that all positions have a reports to, employee and position numbers exist with the right number of digits or characters. I have seen automation using both Excel, macros, and conditional formatting in OrgPlus charts to easily identify issues in the data. Also, do you have any duplicated positions or employees that may have been caused by interdepartmental transfers and the data merging process? Again, Excel is your best friend with this issue, and we don't say that very often. However, formulas can be created in Excel to highlight and remove duplicates in the data. Depending on your core system, the data's format may also have to be manipulated to be able to import back into your core systems. For example, ensuring fields are in the right order. Once you have sorted this out, you may also need to think about whether these changes will impact any other fields in the data, like the cost center or account codes a position is assigned to. One organisation that I worked with started another project once they had completed the restructure to identify what cost centres would be impacted by this change and the type of impact to the cost centre. They modelled this using flags in Blueprint to highlight the affected cost centres. So, a recap on the 7 main points I've covered today. First one was objectives. What are you trying to achieve by doing this restructure? The second one is outputs. What do you need as a result of this restructure? The third one was tools. Finding the right tool so you don't end up with post-it notes on the wall. Fourth one is people. Getting the right skill set for the project. The fifth is collaboration. How your team should work on this project. The sixth is timeline. How does time impact your project? The seventh is data. Considering your data issues that you have, maybe possibly with the current state data or importing the data back. By considering these key points discussed today, you will see a dramatic improvement in any future restructure projects you are unlucky enough to be involved in. Thank you everyone for attending today, and I will pass you back to Michelle.
Perfect. Thanks, Belinda. I'm sure you've left the audience with much to think about. Now, we're happy to take any questions at this stage. So just type any questions into that panel on the right-hand side there. And just while we're waiting for that, I really think that the key message from today's webinar is really no matter how big or small your organisation is, these issues will all be relevant to you. So we'll just wait for some questions to come through. And we've actually got our first question here. So Belinda, Jared's asking, what differences have you seen when organisations have Blueprint at the very beginning of a restructure?
I've seen a big difference, in all honesty. I find customers that have Blueprint and OrgPlus Enterprise as part of it have a better starting point to begin with. Main reason being is that they have data that's getting updated on a daily basis, possibly from their HR system, and this is getting validated on a regular basis by having users look at it. Where customers that don't have Blueprint and or OrgPlus Enterprise, I found don't really have any sort of chart that gets updated on a regular basis. So their current state data to begin with is basically completely wrong. And so they're starting off with bad data. So by having that data ready to go before you even start instantly makes a big difference. Then having Blueprint on top of that, obviously having the skill set in-house to be able to use Blueprint to do the restructures is going to be basically a benefit for you as well. That way, when you're starting the project, you're not having to worry about the tools and things that you need to do and having people skilled up in them. You're ready to go from the start.
Perfect. Just being mindful of everyone's time, I'll just take one last question. There's a few that's been asked, but we'll certainly get back to you once the webinar's over. In your experience, Belinda, how long do restructure projects usually take?
It actually varies a lot. Obviously, depending upon how big the organisation is. Larger organisations don't necessarily take longer than smaller organisations just because of the volume. So I think it's really directed by above and what the timelines the organisation is given. I have seen restructures that have been completed in about a month. It was a very, very intense month, but I have seen that. And I've also seen restructure projects that have dragged and dragged and dragged as well, which probably, again, isn't the ideal situation given that data changes will occur in that time. So I suppose it's important to have worked that time frame out before you begin so that you can avoid those sort of problems. And yeah, it really just depends on having how organised you are with the project to begin with, that you can get it done in the time frame you need.
And just finally, we've got an interesting question from Philip here. What flags should you be looking for to suggest that your restructure isn't working? So I'm thinking what key indicators within the chart would suggest to you that there's something not right within the data that's not working. I think that's what you're trying to say, Philip.
Okay, I see. Sorry about that. Okay, it really depends on what the objectives of your chart, of the restructure are. So I would basically set up flags based on that. Now, there's a lot of data validation type of flags that you can implement in your chart. For example, your project, you may have a defined rule where things like new employee numbers, new position numbers all have to be a certain length, or they have to exist, and have some sort of data validation and rules in place for that. Things like if you're moving people, positions around and you're going to have cost centres affected, you may want to highlight those. Again, it comes back to that objective because you're going to have charts that are also focused, like I showed before, with the organisational design to highlight if you've got too many or not enough reports, depending on your business rules on how many people report to a manager. And also, again, with the levels, so if you wanted to keep to a particular number of levels. So the benefit with this is it really comes down to firstly looking at your objective, working out what the rules really need to be, and then cater for it that way. So yeah, I think that probably depends really on what your objective is as to what the flags you're going to create will be.
Excellent. Thanks, Belinda. Now, there is a number of questions here, but we will attend to your answers once the webinar is closed. So, Belinda, I'll just get you to bring up the slide that notes the blog in which you'll be able to obtain the recording. So we'll get the recording organised, and that should be up in the next few hours or so. But just wanted to thank everybody for attending today. We definitely had quite a large audience. Seems to be that restructuring activity is certainly prevalent across organisations at the moment. So we really hope that you were able to pick up some key points there, and we all wish you the best of luck with your next restructuring projects. Now, if you want to give us a call to discuss how Blueprint can assist you with that, certainly do so. Our consultants are available at any time. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for bearing with us with a little hiccup at the beginning, but I think we recovered quite quickly, and we will see you all soon. Thanks, everyone.